if anybody's watching. It's the middle of the day. Don't really particularly feel like taking a microphone and setting up a whole bunch of crap. Sometimes it's just sort of nice to be able to turn the phone on and just say something, just in case it happens to be of any use to anyone. So today I would like to talk about live streaming. And live streaming, when I refer to that, I'm not talking about video game live streaming or the sort of amateur is not the right word. I'm talking about professional, proper live streaming, multicam for broadcasting. Now, as those of you that are watching me or know me may know, I come from a background of traditional broadcasting, like traditional TV, traditional linear. So I was doing live streaming before there was live streaming. It was traditional television, and I worked at a TV network, and putting on live anything for TV was and remains a major ordeal, right? It was expensive. People expected that it was expensive, and it was not as democratized, might be the word that I would use, as it is now. That having been said, there is still very much a need for proper live stream because we have a lot more outlets than we used to have. Before, if you had a live show in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, or whatever, in order to get it anywhere for people to see, it had to be on television. Now, of course, we have YouTube, which is extremely powerful. We have Twitch. We have a 900 channel universe, and there's multiple maws in which content needs to be filled, right? So this is there's a lot of content that is needed to fill a lot of outlets that will actually carry that content. And so now we have, so I like jiu-jitsu, so flow grappling and things like that. So there are things, so when I talk about live streams, I talk about professional quality television style multicams with proper graphics and proper Chiron. Santosh Tiwari says, hello. Hi, Santosh. Glad to, thanks for joining me. Oh, looks like I've got 4 viewers. Okay, so I'm guessing whoever's watching is either in broadcasting, like me, or is interested in it. Yeah. So for those that are just joining just now, I just wanted to I'm basically talking about live streaming, but in the broadcast sense, because my background is my background is traditional television, linear. I've been doing it for 20 years. And of course, now we are one of the few companies in Western Canada that does proper, and that does a proper television. Skycron and myself are based out of Saskatchewan, Canada, in case anybody was asking where we're from. So if anybody wants to know about Skycron, they can go to skycron.com, SKYCRON as in Nancy.com. And if they are interested in having us do live broadcast events for them, either for internet or for traditional television, they can go to skycron.com/live. So anyway, I just was going to kind of go back to what I was saying about live streaming. So there is a big difference between doing live streaming that you would see on Twitch with somebody doing a game and doing a traditional broadcast style event. It involves multiple cameras. You usually have a crew of 3 or 4 people minimum, generally 7 or 8, and that's relatively small. You can't just go out and buy a bunch of cameras and do it. It takes a considerable amount of time and effort in order to make it look good. And I see too many people and companies that go out and they decide that they feel that they can do a live stream themselves. Like, say they work at some company and they decide to do it in-house, and they realize very, very quickly it's complicated, because essentially what's going on is it is using the same expertise as doing live for television, and that costs money. So we will get hired to do major sports events, or we might be hired to do an awards show for like a year-end or remote events or things like that that may or may not go to television. Typically what you're paying for is, I mean, you're paying for our truck, you're paying for our television cameras, you're paying for our crew, you're paying for the graphics, live graphics that we have, and you're also paying for the experience to have something that is television network quality, right? I mean, you see a lot of stuff where on YouTube where people are trying to do the news thing, but it's not very polished. Sometimes the graphics are a bit ugly, does not look particularly professional. And, if you watch, say, CNN or ABC or NBC or whatever, it's very, very slick. So not only is it a matter of having a team that knows how to use the equipment and has the equipment and it's insured, but also being able to make it look effortless and slick, right? So that it doesn't look like an amateur production. So a lot of the time when you're hiring a company to do a major live stream with multiple cameras, you're mainly paying for their experience and being able to make it look as polished as a network television event. And so this sort of brings me to my next phase of live streaming. And the topic of my rant, if you want to call it that, is that live streaming is expensive. And it's expensive for a reason. Because everybody and their dog wants to be on YouTube and wants to be a viral internet star and whatever, that means that more and more and more people are buying cameras and stuff that aren't necessarily television. People are not producing the most professional content, but in the overall scheme of things is good because it drives the cost of equipment down, and therefore the barrier of entry for creative is lower. But sometimes what that can do is that can cheapen and erode the critical eye of people as to being able to determine what looks professional and what does not. And sometimes people can see the difference but don't see the correlation between the dollars that they pay and the end result. So this is why you will get some clients that think that they should be able to get something that looks like Monday Night Football, for a couple of $100 or $30. There's a reason that this stuff costs. So as a general rule, so let's say we do a lot of, so we do the Rod Peterson show for the Game Plus network, which airs in, it's a cable station. We also do Go Nitro, which airs on a bunch of NBC stations in the United States. It's delivered weekly. A lot of the stuff we do live to tape with the truck. So we're not the most expensive company, but as a general rule, like if we do an event, let's say we're hired to do maybe a municipal or a provincial debate that airs on a local, or a mayor, like a mayoral debate, say, for like a local TV station in a mid-sized city. We would probably charge just shy of 10,000 Canadian dollars for something like that. Right? Because you're basically paying for us to drive down there to the city, set up all the equipment, make sure everything looks okay, do a technical run through, right? Because we have to make sure that we're going to commercials on time. I mean, yes, I know a lot of debates don't have commercials, but I'm just using it as an example. And then making sure that everything stays on time and is live switched. And that's basically what you're paying for. Is if you go out and you get all the equipment yourself, it's relatively easy to do an edited video that is not live and get it to a point where the production values are reasonably acceptable. And so people figure, well, I can just go and get an iPhone, just like I'm doing right now, right? I'm not doing a big production right now. I'm just sitting here talking, and it's nice to be able to just, sit up and do it. I don't have lights set up. I don't have it. It's not in a studio at the moment or anything like else. It's just being done quickly. But if we do, say, a concert, right? If we do a concert at a stadium, say in Edmonton or something like that, or Toronto or Vancouver or New York or whatever, then that might be a $20,000 or $30,000 broadcast that we're doing, right? Because we have to bring the truck, we have to bring more cameras, we have to connect to the television network so that they can get our feed, so that they can take our feed, and we have to do a lot of technical things to get it to air. And, these are things that require a lot of expertise. They take years to learn how to do effectively, and that stuff costs money. So if you have, let's say you have, here's a fairly standard user case scenario, just for shits and giggles. A fairly good user case scenario for when our services might be required might be a keynote event. So let's say, or a year end. So let's say a large company like an insurance company, like we'll say the Cooperators Group or Progressive Insurance or Intact or something like that. I'm just using these companies as examples, right? And they'll rent a big stage in a convention center or hotel, but they might have stakeholders or people in offices or in other parts of the world where they can't have them come in and fly in, so they will hire a company like ours, for example, to produce a television style broadcast, and sometimes it's behind a paywall, right? So that's something that costs time and money, right? So it needs to be done quickly. It needs to be done without a hitch. It needs to be done properly. It needs to be done professionally. And so this is something that's going to cost. So that's not really something that you can do, for $100 or $200 or $300, right? So that might not be something that's going to go to television, but it has a value because it's content that a company is using to deal with their brand. So if you call Skycron, our pricing is good, but we're not cheap, right? So let's say you have a keynote event, right? And maybe it's a benefit dinner, right? That might be $5,000 or $6,000 Canadian to hire, right? Because it's 3 cameras, you've got technical director, switcher, and then we have to basically build the production for you. So it's still going to cost you $5,000, $6,000 Canadian, just for something relatively small like that. Now, if you're doing like you say, sort of a year-end, end-of-year budget shareholder meeting, or a keynote speech or some kind of an event, like a corporate event, then we would charge probably $9,000 or $9,500 or $9,700 to do something like that, because the event is bigger. You need more graphics. There's more steps and things that are involved. Jonathan Kiboni says, "Hello, boy." Hi, I'm 40, but I will take that as a compliment. So all of this is just kind of a long-winded way of saying that if you want to do live streaming properly, it's not free and it's not cheap. It may seem that you can just go out and buy the stuff and then do it on your own, but if you want it to look as polished as something that you would see on TV, you really kind of need to get that thing outsourced, and it is something that you are just gonna have to buck up and pay for, right? Because you can buy the stuff, but then you connect everything and you realize you don't really know how to make all the stuff work together, or you get it working to some degree, but you're not necessarily going to be a TV person. So just because you have the equipment doesn't mean that you're going to be able to make it run smoothly. And then what happens if there's a problem? What happens if there's troubleshooting? There's a lot of things that can go wrong with a live stream, particularly for television, right? So then on top of that, there's special insurance we have, sort of forms of nag and take insurance. And there's a lot of different considerations that have to be made with respect to live productions. And these are all things you're paying for. You're paying for the insurance. You're paying for the experience. You're paying for the ability to troubleshoot with a lot of very complicated equipment in different scenarios, in unfamiliar locations. You're paying for that experience as well, right? So these are things that contribute to the cost of events. So a lot of the time when people ask, well, do I need a live streaming event? Like, say, for example, well, we want a live streaming event. The the cost has a direct correlation on the impression you want to have with your clients. If it's a bank, and it's a shareholder meeting where you might have stakeholders that are all over the world that are dialing in, you absolutely want to make sure that you do not have shaky cameras and weird graphics and a sloppy production. These are things that you simply do not want to have, because if your stakeholders are watching them and they're looking at this, you are effectively being judged by the visual presentation of the image that you project. And if you hire a company that that does anything less than 100% network quality, then you might have stakeholders that start to wonder if maybe they want to invest in your company anymore. And then your working capital is affected. So a lot of the time, it's a lot cheaper overall, considering your end game, to simply pay the money and have a proper multicam stream done properly. Like if you're a client like a bank, so that it looks like a proper television production, so that your stakeholders that are providing working capital, don't start wondering what the fuck is going on at the end of it. So suddenly, if you are spending $5,000 or $10,000 on a proper live stream, imagine how much you're going to lose if you've got a stakeholder that maybe is putting a couple of $1 million, in stock a year, and one of those guys decides, geez, they dial into a remote presentation, and then they start kind of wondering, well, geez, like, I don't feel very comfortable with this. I mean, the camera's cutting in and out, and the quality of the production isn't very good. And, if this is how they're handling my money that I put in, then if they can't even get this right, well, then what the fuck are they using, investing my money into? And then they might pull out. And this is assuming that there's only one. So these are things that you certainly want to consider when you're dealing with live stream. So the next time you're wondering, why is this so expensive, you're not just paying for the equipment and the gear and the insurance, all of which is not cheap, but you're also in effect paying an insurance policy for the peace of mind knowing that it's being done properly, and that it's being done in a way that is going to benefit your stakeholders. And stakeholders do not necessarily have to be just in the case of a publicly traded company. Could be your customers, right? Because you never know who is watching. And so whenever you have any kind of a presentation, you absolutely want to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward. That's very, very, very important. So all of this essentially is just a long-winded way of saying doing live streaming properly, a proper broadcast style multi-stream is going to cost. Like you are, right, because essentially you are projecting an image to your customer base, or to your base that is receiving your message, and it is essentially the curated visual culmination of what your organization is about. And let's not kid ourselves here. Broadcasting is hard. Broadcasting is very hard. And it takes a long time to become proficient at it. I've been working in television in one way or another since I was 16 years old, 15 years old, sorry. Maybe even 14, depending on how you want to deal with the math. So these are all things that you want to consider when you're thinking about live stream. And let's say you're a company or a not-for-profit, and you're like, oh, gee, really would love to have a live stream of our event or our fundraiser. Well, gee, do I really want to spend $5,000? Do I really want to spend $10,000 on a live stream? Well, if you are trying to fundraise as a not-for-profit organization, then then can you afford not to? Right? Do you really think that people are going to donate money to your not-for-profit organization if your presentation looks like crap? These are very important things to consider. Very, very important things to consider. So, like I say, very long-winded way of saying, if you're going to get a live stream, yeah, you're going to pay us $5,000 for a basic one. You're going to pay just shy of $10,000, if you've got, say, a dinner, or not a dinner, like a keynote event or some kind of an award ceremony. $5,000 for a basic sort of, presentation for live streaming, and $9,700 for a something in a, like I say, a presentation in a stadium, or not in a stadium, sorry, like in a convention center. But that's why you pay for it. You're paying for the expertise, and you're paying for the equipment, but you're paying for the expertise in order for it to be done properly. And you are essentially purchasing additional insurance for your brand. And so this is why live streaming isn't cheap, and it shouldn't be cheap, because you get what you pay for, right? Do you want a poorly made Chinese car that doesn't have any standards, that is not going through any kind of safety? Would you want a car that doesn't go through any government safety procedures to make sure that they're safe, versus, would you, here's a better example. Would you want to ride a motorcycle that somebody made in their garage, where they have absolutely no background in making anything like that? Hello, Zero. Wah. Versus going to get something by Kawasaki or Yamaha or Honda, where they have a track record of this, and their per unit cost is also going to be possibly a bit lower as well, right? So next time you end up needing to hire a live streaming company for your corporate event, you want to ask yourself, if it's not done properly and it doesn't look professional, or it looks amateurish, what is my audience, i.e. the people that give me money, right, as a business owner, what effect is that going to have? People are going to have a lot more confidence in a presentation that is done properly, that is done professionally, and that is done with a decent production standard, and are going to more likely provide you with the funds and the customer base that you want. Conversely, if you cheap out and you hire some student, or you decide to do it yourself, and the equipment doesn't work properly, or have cameras that are crooked or whatever, and very clearly not made by people that have a background in television, what's that going to cost you in terms of your bottom line? It's not necessarily something that you're going to contend with immediately, but it certainly is something that you might wind up contending with later. You might have complaints, you might have comments, you might have issues, you might have just stuff where people are not confident about you, they're not confident about your product, and they're not so you're better off to spend a little bit more money up front to have it done properly. So I think that's it for that.